Welcome to my sewing room. We have such a beautiful show for you today. Connie Palmer has brought some really wonderful things to share with you. This tea cozy with its really cute little double ruffle, the Celtic lace shaping, and the gimp work around the Celtic lace shaping was one of the projects that was taught on our recent cruise through the Caribbean. We were sewing and cruising, and that was quite a fabulous trip. This next project is one of my very, very favorites. This is a handkerchief that has been done with 1, 2, 3 rows of lace and a little bit of ribbon and then a pretty monogram. This handkerchief could be a wonderful gift for a new baby, for a bride, of course, is where you would think of it, for an anniversary or for a birthday. I cannot think of any lady that would not love to receive that handkerchief as a gift. This is one of those wonderful pillow covers which has a big beautiful button tied with ribbons. It has gimp work, lace shaping, and you know one of my favorite things in the whole world is machine embroidery. Now this little basket in the middle was used frequently around 1900s, and it is called a wedding basket. I don't really know why, but that particular motif has always been called a wedding basket. Absolutely beautiful are the little white dresses. How in the world can anything be any more beautiful on a little girl than a white linen or a white batiste dress? This is a magnificent dress with the wing needle machine entredeaux down the middle and stopping, looking for the world as if it were hand done, and pin stitching stitches down the laces, and then tiny little delicate machine embroideries across the bottom. One more dress that I think you're probably going to look at and say, well, my goodness, there's a lot of hand embroidery on that wonderful heirloom dress. Well, the secret is there is no hand embroidery. It is machine embroidery, lace shaping, but it's every bit as pretty as hand embroidery. And now won't you come along to the technique boards with me and let's share some more wonderful heirloom ideas. I think you're going to just die when you look at this jacket. I did. Now, there are so many details that I just have to share with you. Let's just start at the top. Let's just start here and go over. This is a beautiful linen jacket. It has double needle pin tucks in the top block. When we move over here, you will see laces which have been crossed over and stitched down with a wonderful wing needle entredeaux work. Now then, going down a little bit, you'll see more laces running horizontally, and they have the bridging in between the laces, which looks for the world as if it were done by hand, but it is done by machine, as we're going to show you in just a minute, and the wing needle entredeaux. Now let me just move back to this side. There's just some loose decorative stitching that goes all the way down this section, more beautiful French lace insertion with the machine bridging, and look at this magnificent machine embroidery. All the trimming is done in ecru. Again, another one of the horizontal strips, and wonderful fleur-de-lis, a very small design, which has been stitched down here on the bottom. Now let's go over to the other side. Folded tucks, very elegantly placed, with more of the bridging and the insertion running vertically with the tucks, and then another very elegant machine embroidery. And you know what? We're not through yet with the details. The sleeve even has the corded, just a very beautiful little strip of cording which goes around. Now the technique for today is how do you do that machine bridging, which looks exactly as if it has been done by hand. First of all, we're going to use a cotton pearl thread and an open toe embroidery foot. The other things we'll use, of course, are the French lace, and this is a wash-away stabilizer. And when you look at the bridging that has been done, here's a completed piece that is done on the wash-away stabilizer. This is the bridging that has been stitched in by machine before the wash-away stabilizer has been removed. And you can get a real close look here to see the bridging after the wash-away stabilizer has been completely taken away. I have as my guest to explain some wonderful things to you today, my dear friend and business colleague, Connie Palmer. Connie is an educational consultant for Husqvarna Viking and a Martha Pullen licensed teacher. Connie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha, for having me today.
What are you going to show us about that wonderful machine bridging?
I'm going to show you how easy that bridging stitch is.
We like that word.
It's very simple. I've always liked how the bridging stitch looked on all the antique garments. And the problem is that we didn't have any wash-away stabilizer that was heavy enough that we could do the stitching on and then wash it away. But now with the new products, we can do that very easily. So all I do is I just take the pearl cotton and wind it onto a bobbin, but I'm going to use the bobbin on the top of the machine. Okay?
Just regular thread in the bottom?
Regular thread in the bobbin. So the first step, I'm going to sew my insertion lace right down to the stabilizer. It's just a little easier if you sew the lace down to the stabilizer, and then on your second step, you only have one thing to move around. So that's what I'm going to do first.
Okay.
So I've already threaded up my machine with the pearl cotton. That's on the top, and the distance that you want to separate these from each other is actually the distance of the shank.
Of the shank.
That's how far you want to put the headers apart from one another.
I don't think I've ever judged distance by a shank before, but I will now, Connie.
That worked out just perfectly. So all I have to do now is just do a feather stitch. I chose a feather stitch. I did lengthen out the feather stitch just a tiny bit. But you can see now that I'm sewing, all I have to do is move this one side because the other side is already attached to the stabilizer. The thing you want to remember, the most important thing, is that you must catch both headers because when the stabilizer is washed away, it wouldn't be attached. So you can see how simple this is.
I think the pearl cotton put on the bobbin is what really makes it especially pretty because it's heavy enough to look like hand bridging, Connie.
I think that's what it is too. And I put a number 14 needle in too.
Put it right over there so we can get a close-up on that.
See
number 14 needle. Okay.
Number 14 needle.
Because of the heavy.
Because of the heavy thread.
Okay.
But isn't that beautiful?
Connie, it's truly beautiful, and the most important thing is it really looks like hand bridging. You look at it and you think, my Connie, I thought you were a machine person. You started doing your bridging by hand?
No.
Thank you so much,
You're welcome.
Connie.
Thank you, Martha.
And now Connie has a second heirloom technique to share with you. I might add before I show you this beautiful black jacket that my blouse and skirt are two of our patterns that we're featuring in this series also. The technique that we're going to talk about on this beautiful jacket that Connie has made is making Cornelli lace. Do you see the beautiful lace work that comes around the scallops, which Connie also has done something very different. On this black silk dupioni jacket, she's made scallops. And then the Cornelli lace follows around and all the way around the jacket, as well as around the beautiful sleeves. This is bobbin work. The bridging had the heavier cord in the top of the sewing machine. This is work that comes from the bobbin. There's a heavier cording thread, and then you make a straight line. You've got to figure out where it's going to go because you're sewing from the top, and the fancy work is coming from the bobbin. And then here is what it looks like with regular thread. And here is what it looks like when you have put the cording thread in. And Connie has made for the front placket of this beautiful black jacket scallops. So guess what? The Cornelli work she did in scallops all the way down the front of the jacket. I'm going to bring this pretty jacket over here with me in case we'd like to refer to it again because it really, really is elegant. And Connie, it's really a contemporary flair for the patterns that we're using for this series. Yes. Connie, show us how you did this.
Okay, this again is very, very simple. In the bobbin, I wound onto the bobbin the a rayon cord. It's just a rayon cord. And just put regular thread on the top. And so first you just have to know where to line up the foot for your sewing machine. And so I just drew a straight line. You can either do it straight line or we could do it with the scallops also. And I'm going to show you both techniques. So I've just drawn my straight line. And remember, you're going to be working on the wrong side because your bobbin work is on the right side. Now, the main thing is when you put your bobbin in, you don't want to put the thread into your tension. You're just dropping your bobbin into the bobbin case because you don't want any tension on that thread. And I've chosen, we have a real special stitch on my machine, a stippling stitch, so it's very automatic. So all I have to do is just start sewing, and I'm lining up the center of my foot with that line. And all I have to do is sew, so you can see how quite simple that is. Now, if you didn't have a stippling stitch, of course you could do freehand stippling.
Sure.
So all I have to do, you see, it's very,
Yeah.
very, very easy. But you'll see the effect when I turn this over to the right side.
Okay, okay.
When I flip this over, you can see the effect
The
on the
beautiful
right side. It's
stippling.
very, right. Now the scallops, all you have to do now on the scallop piece is just follow the edge of the scallop. I just put the foot, the edge of the foot, even with the edge of that scallop.
And that's what you did on this jacket.
And that's what I did on the jacket. Now, you just go around the curve. And what you can do to help yourself is to, if you have a stop feature, which we have a pattern end, so you can end, then if you have to fudge a little bit to get back, see?
Oh, okay.
So you just keep going, and I did not even plan where I was going to pivot. I just kept sewing. See, now there I might have to fudge just a little bit, which is very easy. And then when I get to the point, I'll just pivot wherever I am. Because it's a meandering stitch, so it really didn't make any difference where you stopped. You see?
I love it.
Isn't that beautiful?
And Connie, let's put this over there for another close-up to see how. Just lay it right down there, and then our viewers can see how beautiful. And Connie, I loved your choice of that wonderful fan button.
Thank you.
The pearl button. That really did emphasize the beauty of this Cornelli lace. Now, I forgot to point out a few minutes ago. Can I show them the blue jacket again? The Cornelli lace is also used on this jacket.
Yes.
As you can see, it comes right down the front beside this magnificent piece of lace where we had our machine bridging, which once again looks exactly like hand bridging. And I tell you, this jacket and that one absolutely fascinate me. And really what I love to think about is there are two entirely different looks using the same wonderful stitch.
And the same jacket.
And the same jacket, the same jacket pattern, absolutely.
Right.
Why not get some value?
That's right.
Value from your dollar when you purchase patterns, because they are expensive, and it's also fun. Connie, once I learn how to make one, I like to make it at least 2 or 3 more times.
That's right.
And now we have a garment construction tip for you. Connie has made the most wonderful scalloped front down the front of this jacket. And she's going to tell you exactly how she did it using just the regular pattern. Now, if you will just look how the Cornelli lace went all the way down the front, but actually the jacket is scalloped. It isn't just the lace that's scalloped, it's the jacket that's scalloped all the way down to the bottom of this wonderful jacket, and then the Cornelli lace goes all the way around the bottom of the jacket too. Now, Connie, tell us exactly how you made this wonderful scalloped bodice, placket.
Right. It's very easy. I just extended the placket over just a little bit, just made it a little wider. But then I had the task of drawing the scallops on. And I came across this little scallop template, which made it very simple.
So kind of from the quilting industry, something quilters use,
Right. So I just drew a line down my placket first. And then all you have to do is slide your template over. I wanted 4-inch scallops, so I just started at the neck, start at the neck of the jacket and just trace the scallops. So you just move this little template down. It's a nifty little gizmo here.
That sure does make it easy, doesn't it?
And I just continued down. And when I got to as long as I wanted it, I stopped making scallops. And then that's where I stopped the bottom of the jacket, so that made it really easy.
Yeah.
And I think the easiest way to do a scallop front like this is to make your placket wider. You can see how much I have extending over here on this side. And then you want to sew right on the scallop line.
Before you ever cut it out?
Right. That makes the smoothest scallop.
Okay.
And then once you sew right on the scallop line, you're going to trim and make your seam allowance at that point. And then just clip your curves and turn it right side out. So you see how simple that, it's just really easy. So now I'm going to sew one for you just so that you can see, and I'm just going to use a straight stitch, but I'm going to use a much shorter stitch, real tiny stitch.
And why do you use the tiny stitch?
So that it'll be real tight and real smooth. If you use a long stitch, you might have little sort of hiccups in your scallops, you know, it wouldn't be as smooth. So if you just use a real tiny stitch, I'm going to go down to like 1.0. And of course, on my machine, I have needle stop down. Of course, we have that sensor foot system. So now you want to pivot, because you'll have to pivot. So my foot, of course, is going to pop up. I think you call it the hopping foot.
The hopping foot, yeah. So you can pivot real smoothly there too.
Right. So at the point, see, I just pivot and come around. And then when you're finished, I'm not going to sew the whole thing for you. And then when you're finished, of course, you're just now going to trim out your scallops and turn it right side out. It was
Connie,
so fast.
Well, who would ever dream that this really designer technique that you used on our basic jacket pattern was so easy to do? Connie, thank you so much for all of your magic and for teaching Martha Pulling classes and for always being here with us on Martha's Sewing Room.
Thank you.
And next we have some hand embroidery for you. I'm so happy to have as my guest today my dear friend and business colleague, Kathy Neal. Kathy is a regular teacher at the Martha Pullen School of Art Fashion in Huntsville, and she is enrolled in the certificated course at the Royal School of Needlework in London. Kathy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Martha. Another fun time in the sewing room together. To begin this part of our program, I wanted to talk to the embroiderers who might want a little special challenge. Martha, we've talked about this. You noted some changes in the way that I've been embroidering. If you're really comfortable with your stitches and now you want to move to the next level, perhaps speed and accuracy in your stitching might be an avenue that you might want to pursue. One of the things that many cultures advocate in stitching and embroidery is the use of both hands embroidering. And as I'm showing you the herringbone stitch today, you'll notice that I'm using two hands. Your dominant hand, which would be my right hand, the hand with which you write, always goes underneath your embroidery hoop. And the non-dominant hand, or the hand that you do not write with, would go on top. And that might seem a little unusual to you, but the nice thing about that is the more experienced hand has the blind side, whereas the less experienced hand. And if you're working with both hands, you don't waste the time of coming around the hoop with this motion, and it really does make your embroidery go faster. So let's do a stitch and I'll show you that two-handed stitching.
Kathy, you have to use the freestanding hoop for that?
Yes, you must have a frame holder, just like the one that I'm using, and it must be secure so that you're able to use both hands. And these, of course, you know, stand on the floor. Here, sometimes I use one that I sit on, you know, when I come and visit in the sewing room. And then, of course, there are even some that attach to the table. So let's do the herringbone stitch. The herringbone stitch is a wonderful filling stitch with very, very easy execution. I've used it two places that I'd like to share with you today. First of all, you'll notice in the picture that I have the wings of the dragonfly up in the top corner. Those wings are done in the herringbone stitch, and you'll see that it actually gives the same veining type effect that a real insect would have. This stitch is often used for insect wings and the likes. Also, I used it on the purple flower over on your side of the blouse, Martha. Up in the upper petals, we have the nice herringbone stitch that fills up those petals with just a few stitches. So it's a very economical stitch. It covers a lot of ground with just a few stitches. The types of designs where you might want to use this type of stitch are, of course, areas between two straight or curved lines, or as in the dragonfly wings, you know, an insect wing or perhaps a flower petal. And you begin this stitch by coming up on one side or the other of the design area to be filled, and you want to go across with a slanted stitch. And this stitch, you can actually judge this visually, or if you have trouble judging that visually, you can actually make little dots on your design line that can be later washed away with a pencil. After you make your slanted line, you drop back just a small amount, and then you come down with another slanted stitch. And now I'm going to begin that two-handed stitching that I told you about as I work this herringbone stitch. And as you see, it works very quickly when you do it that way. And as you can tell from this stitch, I have filled up an area with color very quickly with very few stitches, Martha.
Well, that is fascinating to me. Now, Kathy, are these some of the kinds of things that you are learning at the Royal School in London?
Yes, it has a wonderful curriculum there. And all forms of embroidery are taught there, as well as needlework history. And we even at the end of each session have a session where we talk about mounting and framing and protecting and preserving the work that we do.
What a wonderful experience that you're able to. You've been doing this several years now, haven't you?
Yes. Only one more summer to go.
Only one more summer to go. Now that's exciting. And I know you do enjoy teaching these techniques when you have time.
Absolutely.
Don't you have a lot of homework to do?
I do have a lot of homework, but my students really enjoy hearing that I have a lot of homework to do.
Since you give them a lot of homework.
You're a better teacher if you're a good student.
You know what? That's true. Kathy, thank you so very much for being here and sharing with us today. And now, won't you come to my attic with me? This magnificent christening dress, which I purchased in England, probably was around 1850 to 1880. Let me give you a little hint, the reason I know that. The scooped necks on the christening dresses were very early, and that also followed women's styles with the scooped necks. Christening dresses with short sleeves were very early. Around the turn of the last century, they began to put the higher necks and the longer sleeves on the christening dress. Do you see the wonderful work? This is, by the way, this is Swiss embroidery, not hand embroidery. On the beautiful work that comes down to the waistline of the dress, the raised waistline, and then look at this skirt. Do you see how the beautiful Swiss eyelet is turned to the outside, and there are rows and rows and rows and rows of beautiful tucks, and then more of the Swiss embroidery that go, or broderie anglaise as it was called. Let me just hold up the skirt a little bit for you. This would be a beautiful, beautiful skirt for you to copy. It's really and truly just folded tucks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I guess there are 9 tucks in between each one of these sections, and then a very, very beautiful piece of your Swiss trim that is in between the tucks. Now let me show you something real interesting on the back of this dress, and this was true on most of the baby dresses. And even though I think this is a christening dress, it also could have been a baby dress, because babies wore this kind of clothing until they were walking practically. Now let me just show you. This is a tie. It looks almost like a little bitty shoestring, but it's a little tie that was used to close the backs of the dresses. They also sometimes put beauty pins on top of these ties. Now, why did they close these dresses with ties? These dresses were worn a very long time, and the tie acted like a drawstring to pull the dress up to make it smaller for a little baby, and then to let it out as the baby grew. A very practical idea. Thanks for coming to my sewing room. Won't you join me next time?